Okay, guys, we're live. We're here with Andy and Kenny from MakerDAO. Very excited. You guys should know that we at CoinFund have been following your project for like almost as long as we've been following Ethereum. So it's great to finally connect with you in person. So, welcome. And before we start, let me just ask you, for anyone who might be watching that's not familiar with Maker, would you guys be able to provide a 1 or 2 sentence description of what Maker does?
Yes. So Maker is a DAO that's trying to create a stable coin. A stable coin is a token that is price stable over long-term time increments. The most famous stable coin is obviously the US dollar. But there have been many attempts to do this in cryptocurrency as well. Our project is sort of the cultural inheritor of previous stablecoin efforts, and the way that it works is that anytime new coins come into existence, they're always backed by an excess of collateral. That collateral portfolio is maintained by the, you could say, the owners of the system, who are holders of a separate token that's not stable. It is speculative, much like any stock or commodity. And there's stake voted control of the entire DAO based on ownership of this token. So you've got 2 tokens, one's stable, one's not stable. The stable one, absorbs the volatility of the, the non-stable one absorbs the volatility of the stable one by assuming all risk and by assuming all responsibility for administration. I could explain how it assumes all risk, but maybe we'll get into that later.
Yeah, let's save the details for later. And just like a really, really dumb question, why do we need stablecoins at all?
So I guess the main reason would be budgeting over long-term time increments. If the price of something like Bitcoin or Ether is going to change a lot, it's really difficult to do things like budgeting or accounting or something like a long-term loan. So anytime that you need to lock up value for a significant amount of time, you want price stability.
Cool. And then more on the personal side, what are your guys' backgrounds, and how did you come into being part of the Maker project?
Kenny, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Kenny. I kind of got into Ethereum, before it launched, and cryptocurrency a few years earlier than that with Bitcoin. So I've been kind of watching the space for a long time. My background is in e-commerce, and so I had an interest in the kind of the transactional piece of cryptocurrencies in general. And Maker, obviously, from a very early point, captivated my kind of imagination as a way to really transact really efficiently on a blockchain. And so about a year, a little bit more than that ago, I got more involved into this particular project and have been kind of putting a lot of my time into it since then. So yep, that's my background, and my role kind of in Maker is more administrative and less technical. So that's what I do.
So I'm a software, and my name's Andy. Oh wait, we already did that. So I'm a software engineer by trade. I first discovered Ethereum about a year ago, and because I'm a software engineer, my first initial thought was to go to dependent problems that are blocking all sorts of other problems, price stability being probably one of the most important ones. There's a few other ones. So when I first found out about the Maker project, I identified it as a dependent problem for almost everything else that's interesting. So in my view, I'm not crazy. I wasn't crazy super interested in monetary policy before Maker, but for me, it's a problem that has to get solved before anything else that I think is interesting can be done. So I just decided to devote all of my efforts to it until the problem is fully solved. And now, now I work for Nexus Development, which is a blockchain R&D firm, and we are one of the lead development teams for MakerDAO.
Cool. And we also have Renat here. Renat is not on the Maker team, but Renat, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Rinat. I'm with Altoros. We're a consulting company building proofs of concept.
Oh, you're
Okay.
I think you're still muted.
Well, I'm better on yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well,
We can hear you.
yeah, good. So, I've been monitoring the space together with Jake and the rest of the team from the CoinFund angle, and we have a lot of quite a big community. So I represent the one of the people who will be ultimately interested in the outcomes of today's call. So I'm kind of one of the constituents there. So I have some questions, and so my question is, in light of the negative consequences that might become very negative for the community as a whole scenario that we've seen in the past week, what do you as a team and as a project consider to implement in order to prevent the bad outcomes from happening and protect the members of the community, the shareholders, the token holders, the everyone who is involved, and quite a lot of and a part of your life from evaporate and your reputation as well.
So that's a great question, and definitely very relevant right now. I think there's a lot there. We could probably spend the rest of the call talking about governance, but I think that the main thing is that from the start, Maker has been only interested, like Maker has empowered the stakeholders in the decision-making process from the start, in the sense that everything we do is by consensus amongst the stakeholders. So we have a conference call every Sunday, a public conference call, and anybody can join, and that's where we decide like on high-level objectives and where to allocate resources and things like that. And so it's not the sort of thing, I'm not like familiar enough with scenario to start diagnosing problems and stuff, but it seemed like there was a pretty big like clash of personalities at the top, and we just don't have the ability to do that in the same way, because there is no like person who is completely in charge. There are people who are empowered to make sort of administrative decisions, like Kenny and I. We do a lot of project management in Maker, but ultimately we don't have the same sort of like executive authority that maybe existed in Scenario. And so right now, all of our governance works, I guess you could say, loosely, and it's all done via social consensus because we're very small. But in preparation for our growth and bringing new people into the community, we are starting to build the actual like smart contract layer that is going to enable the token holders to have the ultimate control over things like our development fund or our smart contracts, or even things that are more social, like our bylaws or stuff like that. So it's not the sort of thing where investors are sitting powerlessly on the side asking for their money back. It's more the sort of thing where if you invest, suddenly you're part of the decision-making process now.
So you guys describe yourself as a DAO or DAO. Do you see yourselves, given that governance process, do you see yourselves as a DAO today, or are you kind of like working your way to a proper DAO?
Well, that's definitely like one of the loosest terms of art in blockchain, but we're definitely an organization. It's definitely decentralized in the sense that there's no one person that holds all the keys. Right now, the actual smart contracts that are deployed on the chain are controlled by a 4 of 6 multi-sig of the lead developers. There's nothing that's autonomous, so I wouldn't say that. But right now, I'd say we're a decentralized organization, and this is something that I believe very strongly. Decentralization is a goal. It sort of goes into your question. And so it's something that we're adding to day over day. So I would say that we are decentralized today, but we could definitely be more decentralized.
Nice. And then, like, to me, one of the most interesting things of just learning about this space as a whole because, so let me give you a little bit of a background. So like if you ask banking people, if you ask institutional investors looking at blockchain, if you ask Goldman, who's doing R&D in blockchain, other large companies, etc. So in that kind of sector, people tend to view blockchain as an efficiency technology, which to me, misses the whole point, right? Because really, it's the public blockchain aspect of the tech and the ability to, how do you summarize this? I guess to deliver on the dream that the internet promised is like a much more interesting angle with which to explore blockchain. It's also a way of establishing community membership and community fundraising. And so to me, what we're really dealing with here is a change in the operating system of how we build companies, projects, and and even just decentralized networks. So from that standpoint, like, let's talk about funding. Any kind of organization needs funds to run. How have you guys approached this problem?
So when Maker was first created, or when MKR, let me take a step back. There's two coins I mentioned at the beginning. The stable one is called DAI, D-A-I, and the volatile, more ownership one is called MKR. So MKR, when it was first deployed last February, 1 million were created. 500 of those were sold sort of privately by the founder of MakerDAO, Rune, before it was deployed. That was how he funded his efforts, I guess you could say personally, before the DAO started to come to fruition. Since then, we now have 1 million that were created, about 400. Kenny, can you remind me here how many have been sold and how many exists in the development fund, which is the fraction of the 1 million that exist specifically for the purposes of funding development? How many?
Yeah. Currently in the Maker Fund, there are 545,486 MKR tokens in the fund.
So something that because the MKR holders have always been involved in the decision-making process, we have always been extremely careful about doing crazy marketing hoopla events, like a big ICO where a ton of people can buy in and then that's the end of it. That's not something that we've really been interested in. The only people that we want to attract to the platform are people who are see it as a responsibility and something that they should take seriously. So because of that, the way that we do our fundraising is continuous sales. So right now, the way that we're doing it is 200 MKR are sold from the development fund every day for the highest bid price on our decentralized market, Maker Market. In the past, we've done private sales, like I said. We've done maybe more bulk type of public sales, but the basic idea is that as we need funds, we take money we take MKR out of the development fund, and when it's gone, it's gone. So we're not interested in vote by inflation by vote or anything like that. I mean, it's something ultimately the community has to decide, but our cultural norms right now are we've got this money set aside, or this MKR set aside, and we sell it as we need funds.
Sweet. So just could you give us a rough idea of how many people are doing work for the organization, like development work or marketing, etc.?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think there's about 500 or 600 people in our chat. So I guess you could say that's the widest circle to cast. Then of people that show up to the weekly governance meeting, I'd say it's about between 1 and 2 dozen every week consistently. Then of people who develop for the DAO, we've got 2 development teams. One of them is Nexus Development, my company. The other one is called OneUp Development, which is a distributed consultancy that does a lot of our front end work. And then we've had over the over the last year, we've had a few independent developers show up and act as consultants. So overall, I would say right now, actively developing for MakerDAO, we've got roughly 5 or 6 people. It has varied anywhere between 2 when it started to, I guess you could say, probably 8 has been the biggest.
Nice. So is it?
Oh, and then sorry, marketing. I would say that we have, Kenny, what would you say, about 6 people who consider themselves active marketers? Also, we have 2 or 3. We have 3 amazing graphic designers and UX designers, so I should count them as well.
That's right.
And we also have an entire team in Brazil as well that does marketing in Portuguese. So yeah, so there's quite a number of groups, and I actually I have a consulting business, on-chain consulting, which I actually do work for Maker through, which is mostly administration, but there is some marketing. So I would consider myself as part of that marketing team as well.
Definitely, yeah. So the way that it's probably better to just describe sort of the way that we've done the corporate structure. We've got the MKR holders at the top who decide very high level things, and then they kind of delegate authority to smaller groups. So we've got Nexus, OneUp, a few scattering of independent developers. Then we've got the global growth team, and then within the global growth team, there's the Latin American growth team. So those are sort of all of the groups.
So is it fair to say that this is generally a not small, a fairly large organization?
Oh yeah,
but fairly large organization that has taken about 0 venture capital.
Yes, I mean venture capital. What does that even mean in the world of blockchain? But certainly none like traditional venture capital. No.
Well, I mean directly that there is no entity that is no legal entity that has offered equity to venture.
Yes, it's completely community funded, and it's existed for about 1.5 years now. In terms of as an idea and something that at least one person is actively working on.
Okay, so then the next issue is, when let's say you have Nexus, right? So are you a legal entity as Nexus?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then how does Nexus kind of create a relationship with the MakerDAO? Is there a legal relationship? Are you guys kind of just trusting each other?
So as far as how it would be litigated in court, I imagine it would wind up as a general partnership. But the way that we do it right now is that we post an invoice just to the organization as a whole, and then the funds are paid out usually from one person right now who's doing our MKR sales. That would be Rune.
Mm-hmm.
It's all very ambiguous, the whole legality thing.
Does that worry you at all? Are there potential situations
for sure.
where you might
worry me
want to make a contract with someone, but you find that you cannot?
Yeah, it worries me in the sense that it's ambiguous, and we sort of have to dictate the terms of how a lot of this stuff works. There's no precedent. It doesn't worry me in the sense that I worry that I'm going to get screwed over, just because I've been with this organization for so long now that I know that I can trust them. It actually sort of reminds me of the way that business was done before capitalism, where it's just, for what, 100,000 years, the social contract between people has worked just fine for doing business. And that's sort of how it feels like. You really have to I guess you could say, look someone in the eyes before you start developing for them, because we don't have a lot of the legal backstops that you would expect in the normal post-industrial capitalist society. It's weird. It's weird. I'm not going to pretend like it's not weird.
But I would also say too that the blockchain is nice because it's not like somebody can take the money and run off with it. That's just not possible. So we do have structures in place that make the trust much easier. But Andy's right. We have to trust each other at some level, but nobody can run off with the MKR. That's just not something that can happen.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, in a way, it's way better than in a way it's way better than the legal structures we have right now, because we have other like Nexus has other people that consult with us, and they're also legal entities. If they screwed us over, now we have to like sue them in court and pay a ton of fees, and it would be a huge headache. Whereas with Maker, like Kenny's right, the money's right there. If they can't run off with it, there may be a dispute, and it's unclear how it would get resolved. But certain things are guaranteed from the start, which is, for instance, the existence of the funds that we need.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Okay, so let's move on from corporate structure to some of the pieces of what you guys are building. One piece that I'm more familiar with than others and really think is great is the decentralized exchange you guys are building. It looks very nice, and I know you guys added graphs recently and so on. I personally think decentralized exchanges are an exceptionally important piece of blockchain technology. I think that centralized exchanges today are kind of the gateway between fiat currencies and cryptocurrencies, but that they also quote unquote suffer from the vulnerability that for example, government enforcement could attack that point if they wanted to, let's say, shut down the system or regulate it. And so decentralized exchanges, they lie in this area, which is a little bit intriguing and a little bit problematic, but I think very necessary, and which is that without kind of centralized control of any kind, they allow the exchange of different tokens. You can see in the future that different blockchains will be able to transact with each other with the advent of products like Cosmos or Polkadot, or even just by combining chains through like an escrow process like they do in BitSquare. Tell us a little bit about like why you built Maker
Market, you mean? Yeah.
And also what is the fee structure? What is the business model of Maker Market?
Sure. Yeah.
And how much money are you guys making on it?
So we are making $0 and 0 cents. Translated to ETH, that becomes 0 ETH. The reason is that we don't put fees in it. We're not interested in that. That's not why we were founded. It's kind of like conventional wisdom in blockchain that people that put in like arbitrary rent collecting fees are going to get outcompeted by people that just take it, copy it, and remove the fees. So we didn't really want to even deal with that headache, especially for no like good reason. So we just made it. We made it free from the start. The reason that we made it was because of the security implications, right? I mean, you said it yourself. Centralized exchanges, they suffer from a lot of different things, both like governmental pressure, but then all of the high-profile hacks that we've seen over the last God knows how many years. And we just weren't interested in that.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but isn't it ironic how blockchain is often touted as an extremely secure, cryptographically enforced, immutable, impervious layer, and then the only thing that you hear about is $50 million hack.
Yeah, so we saw that coming a mile away. Everybody hates centralized exchanges at a certain level, I think, for that. So at first we were using, So like I said, MKR distribution is like one of the most important things that we had to get right from the get-go. Obviously getting hacked and getting a bunch in the hands of an attacker would be like the opposite of what we want. So at first we were using BitShares, which worked okay for a while. It had some UX problems, which I think maybe you guys know about. And also there was still counterparty risk because the fact that it was a different blockchain from Ethereum meant that you had to lock up MKR with a essentially like a liquidity provider or an escrow. So we were basically kind of right back where we started. That wasn't going to fly, so we made Maker Market like strictly because we wanted the security features of the blockchain, which you said yourself are cryptographically secured, immutable, blah, 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 all that good stuff. And so we've been slowly building liquidity. It's taken a really big jump over the last, I guess you could say, month, to the point where we've got, I think, the biggest volume of any decentralized exchange right now. I could be wrong. Somebody will probably correct me later if I am. But it's been working really well for us. We've been really happy with Maker Market.
What's the ballpark like USD number for volume, if you know it?
So we've got a like a website. I could check really fast. Sounds good. So according to makerdao.github.io/markets, which is where we keep our market data, the trading volume, it looks like for the last market, 4,896 ETH. For the one before that, it was 4,361 ETH. We close them every 2 weeks, so that way they don't become stale in case we need to upgrade the contracts. For example, if there's like a bug in the Solidity compiler or something. The one before that was 6,600 ETH. So it looks like about every 2 weeks, there's somewhere between 40 to 6,100. God, that was horrible. 4,000 to 600, 4,000 to 6,000 ETH every 2 weeks. Jeez.
So you're talking about like approximately on the order of $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So to me, decentralized exchanges are, first of all, really important. Second of all, really underestimated by, I think, a lot of people. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. So, one reason is that when you're doing smart contracts on a platform like Ethereum, one of the holy grail problems is, decentralized data feeds. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Decentralized data feeds, I think, like as an engineer, and I haven't studied it very deeply, but I think it's an exceptionally hard problem. Mm-hmm. I think that doing like really low latency data feeds like you see in the traditional financial sector is going to be exceptionally difficult in a decentralized context. Now, I don't know, maybe someone will come along and invent some kind of math that we haven't thought of yet. But and so when you build a decentralized exchange, and I know you guys are keeping your order books on chain, what you're actually doing is you're creating market data that is already accessible in Ethereum. Mm-hmm. Right? And so what you're doing is you're providing a service that otherwise is really, really difficult to create in a decentralized way, which is pricing different Ethereum assets.
Yep.
And for that reason, I think that decentralized exchanges, just on that alone, I think we'll see increased utilization. But then, of course, you have all these other reasons why decentralized exchanges should pretty much take off. Not the least of which is the recent IRS request of Coinbase for customer information, and because decentralized exchanges are not, I don't see them as being like particularly vulnerable to something like that. Do you guys have you guys thought about these issues? Like, what do you think will drive decentralized exchange adoption?
So one thing that that your point on price information actually reminded me of is sort of a second decentralized exchange that we're working on right now. So today, the way that we sell MKR out of the MKR fund is by one of our big stakeholders with a bunch of MKR sells, like I said, 200 a day. Kenny, is it 2 or 300?
I think it's 300.
Sorry.
It's 2,100 a week.
Yeah, sorry. 300 a day. And then he sort of like posts an expense report, and then we reimburse him from the MKR fund, which is pretty good. That works pretty well, but obviously doesn't scale. So the way that we're going to what we're going to move to is an auction. And I think that auctions actually capture price data even better than decentralized exchanges because of, well, not all auctions, but the one specifically that we're designing, which is called a continuously splitting auction. So the way that it works is every day we're going to put up 300 MKR for auction with some sort of starting bid or whatever. And then if you don't like the bid price for that lot size, what you'll have the option to do is split off a chunk, create recursively create the same auction for a smaller lot size, and then bid on that instead. And so the fact that you can split down to like super tiny increments allows you to find very, very granular price information, which I think will be invaluable for a lot of projects as far as finding price feed information goes. As far as adoption of decentralized exchanges, obviously, I mean, this will come as no surprise to you, but sort of the latency is going to be, I think, the biggest like limiting factor. You know, I mean, Poloniex, I don't even know how much, how many trades they see minute over minute, but I imagine it's quite a lot, more than we have size in each block. So I think that certain types of low latency exchange, for instance, MakerMarket is an OTC market. We've always envisioned it as a place for like gigantic transactions to happen as opposed to like lots of really small ones. Things like that, like OTC and price feed auctions, I think will be really big on the blockchain. And then other things like high throughput exchange will probably, the way that they will be manifest in a decentralized paradigm will probably be on payment channels and sort of secondary payment networks. So that's, I think, as far as like growth and scale goes, that's my vision for decentralized exchange. Obviously, while we have really small like volume, we can do all exchange on the blockchain, which is really nice. And I hadn't actually thought of the point that you made of how easy it is to create price feed oracles out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, as we grow, I think that it will see it split out that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe for certain assets like Plutons and maybe GNT, like you guys are the only source of pricing.
We're not doing Plutons. I think that's Ether Delta, but we're going to add a ton of token support.
Some decentralized exchange is a
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
The whole price source.
Yeah, and for MKR too.
And right, exactly. And by the way, so how would you like tell us what you can trade on MakerMarket today, and how does it compare to Ether Delta?
So the way that what you can trade on MakerMarket today, I believe, is Golem, DigixDAO tokens, and MKR, all against ETH. I'm pretty sure Ether Delta has like everything under the sun, and that's that's good. We want to add token support, so that should change. That difference should change soon, but I don't know if we're going to add every single token that exists. It's really sort of like a community decision-making process. The other difference, I don't know actually if Ether Delta has on-chain order matching. I gotta assume not, because it's very inefficient to do, and I don't use the exchange, so I don't really know. But I do know that MakerMarket does not have on-chain order matching because it's very inefficient to do. So when you post an order, if it crosses with like if your bid crosses with the highest ask, someday I'm hoping that somebody smart gets a bot set up to do that arbitrage, but I don't know. Nobody's done it today. I post everywhere. I shout it from the hilltops. Who knows? Somebody enterprising will do it eventually. Then the other difference is that Ether Delta has fees, which is obviously something that we'll never add. I think those are all the differences. I may be missing some. Unfortunately, I'm not like super up to date on what Ether Delta is up to.
Are you guys aware of like other projects that are doing exchanges, decentralized exchanges as well?
No. Are you?
Well, there's BitSquare, right?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Oh, well, I guess like the Plutus Dex is going to be yet another one.
Oh,
cool. I'm not sure to what extent it is decentralized.
Oh, I do actually know of one other one, but I don't know if I can talk about it. But keep your eyes peeled. Maybe there's another one coming out sometime soon.
Okay, fair enough. Cool. All right, so let's. You guys recently published your 2017 product roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
That was on the 2nd of December, about a week ago. What are you guys most excited about for 2017?
DAI release, of course.
Yeah. Like finally.
What does that mean for like the regular blockchain enthusiast?
So the regular blockchain enthusiast should have a stable store of value. As far as like the regular blockchain enthusiast, I think that it'll mostly be manifest in trading, because like at the initial release of DAI, there won't already be a bunch of like stuff using it. But as far as the average like blockchain developer, it will be very big in the sense that they will have access to stability. It's not going to be as stable as it could be when it's launched, because we're intentionally launching a DAI with a restricted supply side for safety. But every release following that will add stability, and it will be something like when you run an ICO or a crowd sale, or when you're doing something like incentivizing, Swarm storage, or when you're anything that just sort of necessarily has to be decentralized, you'll have access to DAI, which is very exciting.
What is, to the extent that you can talk about it, are there products that we should expect will integrate DAI at some point in 2017?
It's a good question. I think it's something that, so one time Rune was talking to me about conversations that he had with various crypto entrepreneurs, and he would always ask them, how are you going to deal with the price stability problem? And they would just say, oh, it's Ethereum stablecoins. We'll just use Ethereum stablecoins, and so everyone just kind of like hand waved that problem away. So I think it's something that people take as like a foregone conclusion at this point. So I have no idea who will be integrating with it, but I have a feeling that everyone is sort of expecting to integrate with it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question along the lines of that. Where do you guys see the adoption? Let's say I'm as a developer, for example. What kind of value proposition for me will be there in, let's say, next year versus towards the end of next year versus, let's say, 2-3 years from now? How do you see the adoption will happen? What kind of major waves that you may anticipate?
So I think that the first wave of adoption is going to be almost entirely, like I said, decentralized trading and crowd sales. Because the crowd sale thing, especially from a developer's point of view, I think is a big pain in the ass. It's something that we, as a stablecoin DAO, wish we had a stablecoin, because we hold all of our funds that we've sold MKR for in Ether, and we got totally blown out by that slide last week. And it was a big pain for us. So I think anybody that's done a crowd sale will be able to immediately benefit by trading their ETH in for DAI. So that would be the main one. Then going forward, the other one will be how do I say this right? Contract to contract payments. So if you have a smart contract system and you want to do something like consume price feed data from a service provider, that's something that I expect to be mediated through some sort of stable coin. I mean, right now I imagine that all fees are paid in ETH, which is also super awkward. So by that, what I'm trying to say is on-chain service providers. I know for a fact that as Nexus, we're going to be offering a bunch of on-chain smart contract services. And we will do all of our accounting in DAI, because that's just, it's just the most sensible thing to do. So as the adoption pattern that I see post the whole crowd sale trading sort of a feature set, I think will be on-chain infrastructure services for the most part.
Great. And beyond that, what might be the next wave?
The next step, I mean, now we get into really speculative territory, but always the goal for DAI has been sort of to take its place in the real financial system, like the large financial system. So right now, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on international monetary policy, but I really feel bad for the Federal Reserve, because they really want to raise interest rates, but everybody uses them as sort of the global world reserve currency. So their hands are tied between domestic policy objectives and international reality of what the global economy is. So for me, the idea of having like a completely stateless global reserve currency is like really, really exciting, especially from the point of view of people in the developing world that right now are sort of held hostage by the monetary policies of their governments, Venezuela being obviously the most dramatic example. This is part of the reason that we do marketing in Portuguese right now, because like our Brazilian team members, when they first found out about Maker, were much more excited than
Obviously, yeah.
like first world, or, yeah, like people from the developed world when they hear about it, because for them it's like, oh my God, I have a place I can save my money, like for real. So as far as the third wave of adoption, I think it's going to be like real, you know, like world reserve currency stuff, which is where we want to take it.
That's really exciting, guys, because so most people actually would agree in the community that the sheer volume of and value of outcomes is disproportionately needed by the world where it's not the first world problems that we have, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the impact it can create to people's lives is so much greater. All right, and I have one more question on the oracles you have. So you guys have at the beginning of the year, initial Oracle ecosystem and the decentralized Oracle ecosystem. Could you elaborate on what are the challenges that you see in implementing this part of your roadmap, if any, and then a little bit of a expanded question: what are the main risks that you see with your whole roadmap for, let's say, the next year ahead? Right? What do you think might be the most risky areas that could you make a disclosure?
Sure. Yeah. I'd be happy to. So one of the biggest risks is definitely oracles and price feed providers. So drilling into that a little bit, the design, I mean, obviously, like a lot of the work is going to take place in 2017, so the design isn't finalized, but the most challenging aspects for that aspect of the system are going to be, number one, collusion, which is definitely the biggest one. And then number two, just like properly incentivizing it. It's not the sort of thing that's just going to like run freely forever. So it will be a indefinite cost to like an indefinite operations cost for MakerDAO. How do we incentivize that? As far as like the design goes, there's two sort of options. We can either keep a balance of DAI and then use it to incentivize price feed providers, or we can inflate MKR, sell it off for DAI, and then use that to pay price feed providers. I believe right now we would have to bring in our lead architect, but I believe we're leading towards the latter, inflating MKR at a regular schedule and paying price feed providers. But then like administering that is going to be extremely tricky, I guess you could say, because you have to hit the sweet spot where you're not overpaying and you're not harming the price of MKR, but you're not underpaying and incentivizing people to collude instead, because that would make more money. As far as the design goes itself for a decentralized ecosystem of price feed providers, what we're looking at right now is sort of a median-based approach, like sort of bringing in a bunch of disparate entities that are less likely to collude, and then taking price feed information from all of them, and then creating like an aggregate view of the market. Just in general, getting a good view of the market, even in like the traditional financial system, is extremely difficult, and so it's something that will need a lot of fancy engineering. I'm intentionally being vague because like it's not something that's designed yet, but that is as far as incentivizing it and get like just sorry, let me take a second, take a breath here. The two trickiest parts are going to be incentivizing it properly, and then a more general point related to that is going to be governing who we trust. So it's going to be sort of a social problem. a social coordination problem as far as who gets to be a price feed provider at all. And so that needs a very efficient governance layer to effectively select. If you require too much manual intervention and everyone has to think really hard about it, then you're going to get a lot of MKR holders saying that they're too busy to bother with that. But if you do it in a very automated way, like with a prediction market, then you run the risk of allowing it to be gamed if it's if the market depth isn't deep enough. So essentially, we have to strike a balance between those two. This sort of leads me into the description of the Sentinel stake voting system, which I don't know if you've read that article, but it's linked from the roadmap. The Sentinel stake voting system is designed to have total authority over all of the smart contracts, but because it has complete authority from one sort of like consensus machine, it has extremely high consensus requirements, whereby 50% of all Maker has to agree to make a change. If you've seen sort of the way that voting worked on the DAO or in the carbon vote for the ensuing hard fork, you would know that, or in BitShares actually, you would know that 50% of a token supply has never agreed on anything ever. So like that would have to be a really, really, really big deal to make a choice there. So we couldn't make like everyday routine decisions, like for instance, choosing a price feed provider with that. But what we could do is fix a mistake if something like an automated solution like a prediction market failed. So what we're probably going to end up seeing is like layers of governance, each with more authority than the last, and each requiring sort of like lower velocity decision-making power. And I think that's not only going to be a challenge for price feed providers, it's also going to be a challenge for the collateral portfolio and the security parameters for each collateral type. That's going to be like those two decisions are going to be the biggest decisions that MKR holders have to regularly make. The third, not as big, obviously, being administration of smart contract development. That's something that people right now, they put up with a lot of cowboy bullshit because there aren't really like tools to administer that. But in the future, like something that we're going to focus on at Maker is making that development process completely transparent, where no developer has any opportunity to push a change to a smart contract without it going through some sort of governance mechanism. Right now, it goes through our multi-sig, our developer multi-sig, but as we phase that out, we have to replace it with something that is intuitive and works and, you know, strikes that balance between velocity of decision making and safety of gameability. So I think that governance in general is definitely the most tricky thing that we're going to be figuring out in 2017. It plays into so many different aspects of our roadmap. I mean, there's the whole like governance track, which would be our initial solutions, the Sentinel stake voting system, and then secondary solutions. But then it also plays into the Oracle ecosystem. It plays into administration of the smart contracts, and it also plays into things like MakerMarket. You know, just some completely random thing that isn't even really part of the core functionality. So yeah, I think governance is definitely the thing that we have to think the hardest about. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, well, at length. Appreciate. Excellent. Yeah, I could go on, but we have time limits. So, Jake.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that description. Would you guys, having lived through 2016 in the crypto world, would you agree that governance in crypto is one of the most important issues in the table?
For sure. I mean, it's something that we've been thinking about through all of 2016. And it's, yeah, in my opinion, like blockchain in general is like political technology to me. That's what it is.
Totally agree.
Yeah. One more comment on the side note. I'm based normally in Silicon Valley, and there we have a small community. And last time we had an Ethereum meetup, The last time we had a Hyperledger meetup in Silicon Valley, we had Tezos presenting their vision on both how these political, how the proper governance is important for projects on one hand, on another, how exactly they suggest to solve it. So have you looked into the Tezos way of making governance programmable for
I have not.
blockchain solutions? Okay, take a look. Maybe you find some. For sure, you'll find some cool ideas. But unfortunately, the bad news is it's going to be Tezos will be a standalone network, which with embedded governance in there as one of as a main feature, and at this point there is no timeline and no plans to decouple the governance goodies from the otherwise commodity blockchain for portability onto, let's say, Ethereum. So it's not going to happen for the next foreseeable future, but it would be interesting to see how we can have a governance layer.
Yeah, I highly recommend, if you guys haven't seen the Tezos project, I highly recommend checking it out. CoinFund is an early investor. Arthur Brightman, who's running it, very well known in the space, and just by pure random coincidence, used to work with CoinFund, my co-founder Alex, and they have a very, very interesting kind of stack built on OCaml with some like formally verifiable stuff, and also actually like hot swapping of the consensus algorithms and stuff like that. So it's really interesting.
That does sound super interesting. I will definitely take a look.
And I wanted to ask you guys, like, as we head to the top of the hour, just kind of like an abstract question. So Alex, my co-founder, has done a lot of research into, or at least thinking into the security of decentralized networks. And so, like, one of the things he looks at is cost of attack. One of the desirable properties of a network is that, like, as the network grows, right, the cost of attack grows proportionally. You see that in Bitcoin, right? Like, the more miners you have, like, the costlier it is to attack, and therefore that criteria is satisfied. When you look at most POS protocols, though, you find that the cost of attack does not grow proportionally with the size of the network. And actually, Alex also has been thinking about, like, a POS algorithm where kind of all of the stake in the system is automatically either committed or delegated to be committed toward the security of the system, which at least maximizes the cost of attack in that POS scenario. So my general question for you guys is the Maker ecosystem, does it get more kind of stable and secure as more participants go through the various parts of it?
Go through the various parts of it. So I guess, like, it all comes down. So as far as security and governance goes, because I think that those kind of go hand in hand with something like Maker. It all comes down to MKR, the MKR token, and it is a proof of stake application, just like anything else. We've tried to, at least, I mean, like any other proof of stake system, we've tried to make it scale with, like, the price of the token, and we, as the system, like, how do I say this correctly? As the system scales in terms of users of DAI, particularly issuers of DAI, more cash flow comes to MKR. All of the cash flow, all of the fees that issuers of DAI pay is directly transmitted to the MKR market cap by virtue of a buy and burn auction, where that fee is taken and then auctioned off for MKR, and that MKR is burned. So if the system is working correctly, the price of MKR should always be increasing, which means as usage increases, the system should, in theory, get more secure because more cash flow will be traveling to the MKR market cap. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
In addition, the systems that we've designed, we've also thought of cost of attack very carefully. So for instance, in the Sentinel stake voting system, the fact that you need, half of all MKR to make a decision is extremely costly. And furthermore, when you make a vote, the fact that your MKR is kind of locked up, and if you intentionally sabotage the system, you will sabotage, you can't vote to sabotage the system, sell your MKR, then short it on the way down. You actually have to kind of live with the consequences of your actions by locking up the MKR until the change is fully activated. So we have a few different ways of trying to increase the cost of attack for our system. And some of them scale and some of them, don't quite as much.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, first of all, thank you very much for talking to us. Also, thank you for being regular presences in our community. It's always great to have you. And is there anything that you guys want to call out, maybe from your roadmap or something that you're excited about, before we go?
Just look out for that DAI release in the end of Q1 2017. We are super excited. And thanks for being an awesome community on Ethereum. One of my favorites.
Me too.
Thank you. Appreciate the compliment. Okay, guys. Take care, and I'll post the video when it gets processed.
Cool. This was really fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, same. Thank you, guys. Bye. Bye.